Namaskar, everybody, brothers, sisters, friends. Today, I'm taking a topic which came to me via one of these people who are in the panel now. When I did the show on emergency on 25th June, Kamlesh Bhai Sahab, my elder brother from Canada, my Chachaji's son, he sent a message to me why FISI, Friends of India Society International, was not mentioned, why its role was not talked about. So I said, okay, let me have a full-fledged program because it cannot be done in 2 sentences. So that particular thing led to this program. And this is a program which will, for the first time, have a public program on the role of people of Indian origin, NRIs, to save democracy in India and struggle for removal of emergency. And the 3 people on the panel today are the people who were the founding members of this particular organization and who did a yeoman service to see to it that pressure is brought on the Indian government to remove emergency. I have with me a very distinguished panel. The most senior and most distinguished to begin with, Professor Ved Nanda. Professor Ved Nanda is distinguished university professor at University of Denver. He founded International Legal Studies programs in 1972, and he directs Ved Nanda Center for International and Comparative Law, established in his honor by his alumni and the friends. They also established a professorship in his name. Shri Ved Nanda is an honorary professor in Delhi University. He has received honorary doctorate from Soka University, Tokyo, and Bundelkhand University, Jhansi in India. He is teacher in numerous universities in US and abroad. He has leadership positions in Global International Law Commission, World Jurist Association, American International Law Association, American Law Institute, American Bar Association's Human Rights Center. He has been US delegate to World Federation of UN in Geneva. He has been officer and board member of several international and national NGOs. He is a chair emeritus and honorary trustee of Oberoi Foundation of Religious Studies. And he has won numerous awards, including Padma Bhushan in 2018. Actually, the profile is much bigger, but then that would take more time of the discussion. So I'm just cutting it short. In March 2020, he was honored with University of Denver as founder faculty member. It was the first time a faculty member has been honored in 160 years of the University of Denver. So that's a rare honor. And with me, he's from US. And then we have Shri Hasmukh Shah, a scientist. He finished schooling in Nakuru, Kenya, under my Chachaji, Jagdish Shastri ji. And we have fond memories. We have been together in India many times. He did in Bradford, he did his graduation in applied physics. He did research on plasma nuclear physics, and in UK and under Atomic Energy Authority of Oxford. Worked on prototype of tokamak plasma cyclotron, which is predecessor of CERN Large Hadron Collider. He is a founder member of Friends of India Society International with Kamlesh Sharda ji, who is there on the panel. And he is a HSS member, Hindu Swayamsevak Sangh members in 1967, chairman of Hindu Marathon, one of the most successful marathons in UK, which is running for 14 years. He's also the founder member of Seva International UK, which began its work when Latur earthquake hit India in a very horrible manner. He's founding trustee of Vishwa Hindu Parishad UK. He is on advisory board of many institutions, and he was also founder advisor to National Hindu Students Forum in UK, and founder member of Saraswati Vidyalaya, which is like Ekal Vidyalaya of Nepal. So that's his short profile. He has just recovered from COVID, and it has taken a lot of effort for him to be on the show. And I wish him very fast recovery. And it's his big heart that he still decided to come, because till afternoon we are not sure how good he will be, but he's there. So welcome, Hasmukh bhai. We have Kamlesh Sharda, my elder brother, son of Jagdish Chandra Shastri Sharda ji, who has actually begun Hindu organization work abroad, beginning from Kenya. It was called Bharatiya Swayamsevak Sangh. He's born in Amritsar, raised in Kenya, and was active member of HSS from beginning. He did his graduation from UK in Mechanical Engineering, Bradford University. He's founder member of Friends of India Society International. He's active member of First Hindu Society Leeds, which was founded incidentally. Since he wrote it, I didn't know. Founding member was my elder brother Ved Nanda, Sharda, who was studying there. And he is president of Hindu Charitable Trust Leeds, UK was, and which built the first Hindu temple in North England. Now he lives in Canada for many years. So as you find, these are all very wonderful personalities who have dedicated that work for the society in a very wonderful manner. What brings me here is, when I talked of this role of Friends of India Society International, it took me back to 1978, when as a young volunteer, college-going volunteer, I was among the young people who were working behind the scene for organizing this event. It was the first event of Friends of India Society International after successful removal of emergency, where they were invited. And I think delegates from 16 or 17 countries, am I right, Hasmukh bhai?
Yes.
Came for that particular program, and all the three who are sitting here were present in that convention. It was in ISKCON, Juhu. And so that's the beginning of the whole thing. I just shared the screen initially, and I have got some publications which Hasmukh bhai shared with me, Kamlesh ji shared with me, about the booklets they took out. And one person which Hasmukh bhai will talk in detail was from Vadodara. He did wonderful work. So to begin with, I would request Hasmukh bhai to open the talk by telling us what prompted you to organize this particular Friends of India Society International. We only know that Dr. Subramanian Swamy vanished from Parliament, ended up in UK. He did a lot of programs in UK and Canada. But the people behind his vanishing act and behind his successful tour of UK and Canada are these people sitting here in their youth. They are still youth in heart, young in heart. So I would request Hasmukh bhai to tell us a little about organizing this Friends of India Society and about also various publications, etc., that you did.
Yes.
And also the role of Makran bhai.
Namaskar. We were at a youth leadership conference in 1975, June 25th, 1975.
Oh, the very day.
Yeah, well, just one day before. So we were at this leadership conference at University of Bradford, and the next day we were we were meeting some of the leaders who had come to inspire us, and suddenly a news came. There was a news flash that Indira Gandhi has declared the notorious emergency in India, and thereby also came the news that many political leaders were arrested. But more important for us was that some of these political leaders were very close associates of ours. They were close because people like Param Pujya Balasaheb Devras, and there were so many others included in this. Raju Bhayaji and so many were completely carcinated in jails. And at that point, we felt that because they are our own people, that it is happening in our own country, we felt strangled. This emergency declaration was as if a noose was around our necks in the UK. And the adhikaris, the leaders who were present, they summoned us, a few of us, we were a bunch of fiery activists, starting from the age of 23 to 27. Kamlesh ji was, I think, 27, the eldest of our. They also called us the Ginger Group. because we hardly used to listen to others and did whatever we felt. And therefore, in the meeting, it was decided that we must do something to oppose the rule of emergency imposed by the tyrannical Indira Gandhi. And at that point, we decided that we will fight from the UK, from abroad, and we'll seek advice from our friends in the USA, from Kenya, from Europe, everywhere. And we started an international dialogue. And immediately we had formed a group called under the name of Indian Freedom Front.
Okay.
As if we were just going to go out like
But actually not surprising, because UK was also the headquarters of revolutionaries from very old times, right?
True. And under the leadership of Kamlesh Sharda and others, we decided that we will muster support and we will counter the tactics of the Indian government, who were trying to justify the imposition of emergency. But soon after many meetings, we had one very respected elder leader, Manya Lakshman Rao Bhide, who came all the way from India. He also he was under scrutiny, but it was quite a difficult task of him to get out of India. And we had Manya Jagdish Mitra Sud, who also came to guide us. And after a lot of deliberation, we decided that the name Indian Freedom Front was okay for a while. It sounded good to the press that, oh, here is a bunch of activists, revolutionaries who will work against Mrs. Gandhi's rule. But then, thinking of a long term and thinking about what our elders advised us, we formed Friends of India Society International. And its first president was Kamlesh Sharda. And I was appointed the general secretary. Jagdish Mitra Sood and Lakshman Raoji were our advisors, and others who were with us were Sri Ramanbhai Khatri, a pillar of our organization. Incidentally, his address in London was 155 Junction Road. So we coined it differently. We said it's a Jan Sang Road. Yeah.
So
when Manya Atal Bihari Vajpayee came during this period, he said this is a fantastic coinage of the world. And we had Jayanti Bhai Patel, Thakur Bhai Patel, Sukhdev Sharma, another fiery person who was just retired from his army role in the UK. And we had Bharat Bhai Shah, who is the current president of Friends of India Society, and Arjun Lal Sharma. And later we had interaction with a lot of others like Dr. Krishna Purushottam Hardas, who also became Secretary General of FISI for many years. We had Dr. Ved Nanda as the president, and here he is with us. He guided the society for so many years on the correct path of representing India and its values on the international forum. We had Ramesh Desai, president of the UK branch, and we had Chunibai Chawda. We had Mayur Shah, who was the secretary of UK branch, and then Bharat Bhai Shah, who is now the current chairman. But there are, I'll let others speak.
Bharat Bhai also telling me the names of a few from Africa. Chunibai Haria and
yes,
right.
Of course, they were They were the backbone of our and the pillars of the organization, and they guided us and supported us thoroughly.
Hmm.
Um, but there are many anecdotes and many um, uh, throughout the emergency. We had some very exciting incidents, which I would
We'll
like
come
to.
to that. First, we'll let us lay the foundation of FISI. So
Yes.
Kamlesh ji, how many people were really active, ready to go to any length?
Well, actually, we were a very small group to start off with. Um, you have to look at the scene on the ground in 1960s, 70s in UK. Most of the people had just emigrated to UK, and the students were spending their time in universities, and everybody was struggling to survive in a new country.
I've
And they were
heard your stories about how you survived. So that's another
Yeah, it
interesting
was very
anecdote.
difficult survival, particularly in those days. Immigrants were restricted to certain parts of the city, and only certain types of jobs were available to them. They were the hard jobs in foundries and woolen and cotton mills, etc. And even accommodation was a problem. So just imagine a scenario where you don't have cell phones, and the regular phones cost a lot of money, and people have to finance their own education and find accommodation. So they were in that settling mode and survival mode. And then this bombshell hit of emergency, and people were diverted from their efforts to settle down. But a small group of volunteers, Hasmukh has mentioned quite a few names, and there were many more later on, decided that we're going to plunge in with both feet, no matter what. And let me tell you that at that early moment of development of our organization, the heart and soul of that movement in the beginning was Shri Hasmukh. And with his magnetic character, he involved a lot of people of all groups, of all levels. And so it was tough. And keeping in mind that the Indian embassy was looking at everybody, and particularly students from Bharat, they were really abusing their power to make sure the students don't get visas, or they were marked or
Oh,
listed,
okay.
etc. So it was a very tough time for the students as well. So just to answer your question, yes, in the beginning there were just a few people, but due to effort of some of these volunteers, the work grew and spread to every city where there were our people in UK.
Good. So Vedji, you were in USA. So you had your own group in USA. So how did you begin it?
Namaskar, everyone. As you probably know, at that time in the United States, unlike Britain and unlike Canada, people were just arriving. So it was the beginning. And we were looking to Britain and we were looking to Canada because they had Indians living there for some time. They had made their own mark, they had made their own places. But in the United States, until the mid 60s, as you probably know, that Indians could not come. And then obviously when it opened up, people had come, and as was mentioned earlier by Kamlesh ji, it was an issue of survival. But Jatinder Kumar ji in Washington, D.C., he was a good friend of Subramaniam Swamiji, and Swamiji came. And then what had happened in this country, Ratanji, was that people in different places were fighting their own struggle, but at the same time taking the cause of Bharat's emergency. Now, kindly keep in mind that at that time in the United States, after 1973, when the Arabs, and especially those who had oil, they were using oil as a weapon. They had embargoed. And the United States was going through a very, very difficult period. Okay. Because at that time, for example, and I'll talk about it later because I would like to have my colleagues take some time and say more about the beginning. But what had happened was that all of us who were trying to reach people in decision-making, people who are going to be opinion makers, so that they could put pressure upon India. Because at that time, unlike today, when the diaspora in this country is very strong, we have people in Congress, we have people who are very close to Senate. I've got all personal friends, but not just me, but many people who can now wield some power in order to get things done. But at that time, it was very difficult to reach out both to decision makers and opinion makers. Mm-hmm. And I'll talk later, but I was writing a column for the Denver Post, and I was also teaching, and I wrote pieces against the emergency, tried to reach out to people. But mm-hmm. at that time, the United States government was not willing to do anything. It was business as usual. Mm-hmm. And the Ford, President Ford had come after Nixon's collapse. And because of that scandal, he was tied up. So the United States government was not going to put any pressure. Opinion makers, they were being from India expelled because I went to Washington, met the Washington Post columnist mm-hmm. who was expelled from India. And then in any event, I'll talk more about it. But mostly in this country, the effort at that time was by individuals, by small groups, to reach out to opinion makers, to reach out to decision makers, to write, to speak up against the emergency. But unlike the United Kingdom, unlike Canada, we did not have a countrywide effort in order to do that. Individuals, small groups, and they were very successful. And I'll talk more about it later, but that's what I wanted to mention to you about the beginning Great. Of the movement here.
Great. So Hasmukh bhai, tell us some of the anecdotes and what kind of activities you did to create pressure.
Yes, certainly. Our first task was to see if we can muster public support. And to do that, we organized a rally against the emergency in Trafalgar Square, London. And we were concerned. Will people join us? Will they support us because of the underhand dealings by the Indian High Commission at that time against organizations, Indian organizations and individuals, and they were really pressurizing them not to listen to this bunch of young activists from Friends of India Society. Mm-hmm. But lo and behold, we were so lucky that at the Trafalgar Square meeting, and I think I've sent you a photograph where there is one Sikh leader from Birmingham Sikh organization, along with Kamlesh Sharda and myself on the dais. And we had a gathering of 350 people.
Oh, place like UK.
This is the first rally that we organized against the rule of emergency. And that really emboldened us. But at that point, we also heard that some communists from the left in the UK, Indian Workers Association, they had also organized a rally in support of Mrs. Gandhi, and that was in Hyde Park. And as soon as we heard that, myself, Kamlesh ji, a fiery Sukhdev Sharma, Bharat Shah, and few others, we just thought okay, we must go and attend that meeting, and we were there. And in fact, it was like rent a crowd. Those people who were attending were really poor immigrants from India. They could hardly see what understand what was being said, and there was a truck, a flat truck from where speakers were asked to speak up in favor of Indira Gandhi. So Kamlesh ji said, "Look, don't do anything silly here." Being me, I jumped on top of the truck at the back. Sukhdev ji joined me on the loudspeaker, and I addressed them for at least 3-4 minutes, condemning Indira Gandhi until Vishnudat Sharma, the, the Indian Broadcast Association guy, he realized what had happened. And he came, he sent a few goons, and here was Sukhdevji Sharma trying to fend them off. And Kamleshi also joined the fray, along with Shah. And that incident is still shared by a lot of people who also came to see what tamasha we were going to make. And that taught a lesson to the Indian High Commission and also the Indira regime not to send ministers to justify by holding public meetings, because that was a tester that we would give. And many times we opposed their meetings elsewhere, and we did not allow them to hold these meetings successfully. But one of the important aspects of our campaign was to establish a magazine, news letter called Satyavani.
Yes.
And its first editor was late Shri Makran Desai from Baroda, who had also come here along with who had come here with Dr. Subramaniam Swami, Shri Kedarnath Sahani, and others. And we hosted them as soon as his disappearance took place in India. He suddenly appeared in the UK and stayed with us for a long time.
Yeah, here I'm showing the kind of writers you could gather for your bulletin. So people can see there are distinguished writers and distinguished journalists and very eminent people. So that's why I shared this particular page of your bulletin.
Yes, we have Dr. Ved Nanda's article there as well,
Yes.
along with Dr. Subramaniam Swami.
Right.
And we were, Kamlesh ji and I, also were co-authors with Subramaniam Swami, this particular book,
Right.
What Killed Democracy. And well, I wasn't a co-author, I just proofread the text. And so this was our first publication, followed by others. As you can see, there were others as well. Yeah, yeah. So these are some of the anecdotes and exciting things that we did.
Right.
Our seniors always kept us on check. They said, don't do anything which is going to bring shame on the Indian values. And we didn't do anything.
Kamlesh ji, can you tell me something about Makran Desai's role? Because he was one of the key players in this underground literature. So can you tell us something about Makran Bhai?
Makran Bhai, he appeared suddenly on the UK scene. You see, there were no direct links with India. They were very indirect methods of communication. So we always kept it that way for security reasons. So Makrand Bhai just appeared suddenly in London, and then we took over. Essentially, his role was again to create a narrative. And we had some connections with BBC, the only channel that gave us some coverage, not much, but they were obviously playing their role in their interests as well. So Makrand Bhai, we took him from city to city to city. And the good thing was, since he was from Gujarat, a large population of our base was from Gujarat. So they identified with him and they listened to him. And so that really helped us bring all these people together into our organization.
Before I bring Vedji, I would like to know the adventure of Subramanian Swamiji, whom you received in UK, and then he went onward to Canada and US, etc. So, can you give a little idea about how you hosted him?
Yeah, again, Subramaniam, Dr. Subramanian Swami just popped in. We had a meeting at one of the buildings in London, and we were invited. So I went there. I think Hasmukh was also there and other Karyakartas to meet this gentleman who's come from India. Now, we saw him for the first time. He was an impressive speaker, but he has his own style. Originally, he was from US, so he had that US flair when he spoke, you know, and it was quite interesting for us to listen to him. I remember an interesting anecdote. My wife Karen was expecting, and she was from London. She had made a beautiful sweater for me, knitted a beautiful turtleneck sweater, and I was wearing that proudly for that first meeting. And Dr. Subramaniam Swami kept on complaining about cold, and it was cold. He had just come from a warm country. So I took my sweater and gave it to him. I said, look, my wife made it for me, but looks like you are the lucky one. So here, wear this as long as you want. He loved it, although I had to deal with Karen later on that night. But that's an interesting thing. Also, Dr. Subramaniam Swami, he was very courageous. He wanted to jog. He liked jogging. And we found out he was being followed. The embassy had probably hired some goons to fix him. So we had to change his residence from time to time to give him some security, you know, in our own little way. But because of his style, his talking demeanor, he did manage to galvanize a lot of support. And he was able to talk to BBC and other media very professionally. That was a big asset.
Yeah, we have limitation of time, so I'll go to Vedji and ask him what he wanted to complete. He said he'll talk later. So Vedji, floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. As I mentioned, we had England and Canada to guide us. And, both of them, Hasmukh Ji and Kamlesh Ji, they played a critical role. And Jagdish Sood Ji and many others at that time were the ones that we were in touch with. I think there are many people around this country at that time, our own Karyakartas, who had been active. So kindly forgive me, but I'm just simply going to say what happened here and how at least what I did, obviously many others did, because I went to Washington several times, talked with New York Times, talked with Washington Post, and I know that BBC had called her a dictator. And I think neither the British government, nor the United States government, nor Canada, and as government put any pressure upon Indira Gandhi. But what happened here is that from Yale Law School, a very good friend of mine who came to Denver, he became a senator. His name is Gary Hart. And through senator, because of him, the other US senator also at that time had become a good friend. A couple Congress people also. So through them, I wanted to put pressure upon the government, but the government did not budge. It budged only after Indira Gandhi kept talking about CIA. And then the government took notice and they said, we are going to cancel all the money that we are going to give you, the aid and all that. So they started moving, but it was not because of the emergency. But what happened here is that the main effort done was by newspapers, by magazines, by people who were opinion makers, and they put pressure. Just as BBC called him a dictator, Washington Post, New York Times, they kept writing. Here, because at that time I was in Amnesty International as an advisor, I put pressure upon them, put pressure upon human rights groups, and in order to have them put pressure upon India, and I make sure that they did. So I think that was the main effort on our part in this country. Dr. Subramaniam Swamy did come, and Jatinder Kumarji is the one who was in Washington and taking care of it at that time. But we were very few, and there was not much from California. There was not much from Chicago.
True.
There was some effort, but the effort mainly was Britain and Canada, and we were just seeking their guidance. And individually and in small groups, we continued our effort in order to put pressure upon Indira Gandhi.
A limitation of time would I would like to give last few minutes. It is said that even I have noted in the book, and many other author journalists have also talked about it, that the Friends of India Society International's role in pressurizing the Indian government and kind of pressure that international community built led to Indira Gandhi deciding to go for polls. How much you think that is true, Hasmukh bhai?
Well, as you can see, in April of 1976, we organized the first international conference for restoration of democracy in India. And just before then, we were creating a tremendous amount of pressure on the Indian regime of Indira Gandhi. And at this conference, surprisingly, there were 350 delegates from 15 countries who attended. And there were nearly 60 news agencies, including BBC, The Times, Bernard Levin, the famous author, and I'm sure Vedji will know him. He attended, and that's suddenly the news people did not want to know what is going on in India from the Indian government or the Indian Commission. And we believed that was the turning point. And after that, I think the sailing was quite clear. The writing was on the wall. This is Indira Gandhi to quit. And this conference in Alexandra Palace on restoration of democracy was the highlight of our campaign. Okay, and also delegates, well, Amit Mitra came, Dr. Mahesh Mehta, Subramaniam Swamiji, we had Makranbhai Desai, all these prominent people and speakers and economists came to this conference and highlighted the atrocities committed, and 96,000 prisoners of political conscience were held in India, much more than Solzhenitsyn. His Gulag Archipelago was about a small amount of people, a number of people in jeopardy over there. But here was an example of many thousands of Solzhenitsyn in India.
Kamlesh bhai,
Ratanji, I might say a word about
sure, please.
the embassy here. Unlike the British embassy, the embassy here, because there were not much going on in the country, they were not very keen. But I'm sure that I was not the only one. There were others also, they were targeted a little bit. Because I was called and I was simply given an incentive. They wanted me to serve India and to represent India in the Law of the Sea conference that was going on. And I had been writing about it, so they wanted me to do that. I did not say that at that time, but I simply mentioned, no, I'm very busy. But I really wanted to say to them, that price is too small for me to defect. So in any event, they were trying to put pressure, but there was not the same kind of thing. There was not the same kind of thing as in Britain.
Right, right. So Kamlesh, apart from getting on the truck and trying to beat the people who wanted to stop Hasmukh bhai, what other adventures did you have?
We had a lot of challenges because we were young, we had fertile minds. The good thing was collective intelligence. Although we were just a few, we put our minds together and we came up with the answers and to the challenges. And one of the interesting things is that immediately after emergency was declared, the ambassador, he sent a huge package justifying emergency by mail to literally thousands of Indians who were living there at a very high cost. And people were almost trying to brainwash them that the emergency is good for them. So how did we counteract? We had no money, no funds, just brains and put in a lot of time. So what we did was Amrit Bhai Shah, he put together a caricature of Mrs. Gandhi on a sheet, stepping on thousands of people.
Oh.
And the headline was "Democracy Destroyed" or something like that. And in one of the functions where the ambassador appeared for, I believe...
This is the one you're talking about?
No, this is
Independence Day.
This is another one.
Yeah, there's another one.
Yeah,
I think this appeared in Punch. If I have seen the photo scan with me, it is in the Punch magazine.
No, this was done by Amrit Bhai initially.
Okay.
Yeah. So we gave it to all the people who were attending his meeting, and they just thought it was information about the meetings. So they took it inside, and we also gave it to the ambassador. And while sitting on the dais, he looked at it and he suddenly was shocked as to what was on there. And he declared that don't take notice of this. These are just hooligans. And people who had just not even seen it, they all looked at it the first time and they suddenly saw the caricature, and that gave us free publicity and people got another version of what was happening. So that was pretty interesting, small trick.
So what
Ratanji, I might mention also that after having written a legal chapter against emergency, sent it to the United Nations, and then I went and met the United Nations people, but they also were not willing to do a whole lot about the emergency. I think one of the rapporteurs did take notice of my piece and others that had been done, and did make some noise, but the United Nations was not very keen to take an action.
I think since we have brought together old friends of FISI, I think you people need to document and compile all these memories and all these documents together, because Hasmukh has some, you have some, Kamlesh has some, and there are many who are not in this particular talk now. They would have a lot of stories to tell. So I think we need to put it together. Hopefully somebody will take some time off and prepare it. And that will be wonderful documentation for what FISI has done for Bharat and what you people did in a young time when you hardly had any resources. you're struggling for your own careers and for your own studies. And that time you people did all this, and with major resources, what can be done has been shown by you. So last few comments, anybody can make last few comments.
One last thing was that in January of 1977, in the bitter cold, we had decided that we will have a large rally protesting against the emergency.
Okay.
And we did that. There were 3,000 people who
Oh.
were against the Indian High Commission. And it was good. And the Indian High Commission had declared Kamlesh, myself, Dr. Hardas, Dhirubhai Shah, persona non grata. We were asked, we won't be allowed to go into India. That was the other thing that came out of this. We were too much of an irritant for these people. Yeah. And the role of Narendra Bhai Modi, because I was collating a lot of materials, he was jumping from one jail to the other, collecting newspapers and then sending all this information back to us. We printed this and sent back to Narendra Bhai Modi, who then went to the prisons to give them to people like Jai Prakash Narayan, Balasaheb Devras. Look, people are still working for India from outside.
Great. So I have got my call from TV studios after me. I am already late. So last 30 seconds each, if somebody wants to add.
I think I want to volunteer both of my friends who are sitting here to compile that and to lead. And I'll see Jatinder ji, who
That's
could not
really
be here
wonderful.
today,
That's really wonderful.
and others
outcome
who
of this
joined.
discussion. That's
And
such
I'll
a wonderful
send the
gesture.
material to him.
Wonderful, sir. Wonderful. Veji, that's great.
Ratanji, thank you for giving us.
Thank you so much. And I hope this becomes the first oral document to begin with, and then we can compile it in a printed form also. Thank you all of you for the wonderful time given and wonderful anecdotes and experience shared with people. I think so far this never came out in public. So I thank you all. And I hope this leads to better documentation now. Thank you so much. Namaskar.
Dhanyawad, Arsan ji.